All right, so welcome back, everyone. Um, so we get the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Rick Csiernik, for another approximately hour and a half again today, an hour and 15 minutes, I guess. And so we're pleased to have you, Rick. And Rick is going to be speaking about sleeping, dreaming, drugs, and mental health. And in the event some of you have not already heard Rick speak today, he's going to provide a little bit of an introduction of himself. So welcome, Rick, and we're so thrilled to have you again. Thank you.
Um, I know who the masochists in the room are. 3 hours listening to me. You people are very, very tough. For the YouTube channel, my name is Rick Csiernik. I am Senior Instructor in the Addiction Studies program at Laurier and Professor Emeritus at King's University College. I've been in the social work field for 42 years now, and addiction is my area of specialty. And I want to talk about this afternoon about something that no one's taught you about, I'm betting, because no one taught me either, and I'm supposed to be the expert in this field. But if you've noticed the chat, there is an opportunity for you to do something in about 10 or 15 minutes, but only the bravest of you. I'm going to ask you if you want to recant, voluntarily, of course, a short dream you may have had recently, and I will classify you empirically as opposed to culturally. All right, sleeping, dreaming, drugs, and mental health. Take one to help you relax, get your affairs in order, then take the rest, right? I always think it's fascinating that they're called drugstores and no one thinks anything about them. Understanding anxiety dreams. You're late, it's been moved to another building, and you're supposed to introduce a speaker. The turducken of anxiety dreams. In North America in general, and I'll speak to Canada specifically, insomnia is a major public health issue. Inadequate sleep impacts your physical and social performance, your ability to work, and your quality of life. As I now am officially a young old person, all the material I get about young old people trying to maintain my health as an age in society and not be a burden on the healthcare system talks about the ever-increasing importance of sleep and quality sleep. And as you see the little note at the bottom, which I know you can read, sleep is necessary for physical health, but it's also important for mental health. So we all know we need to sleep to rest, but without sleeping, you can go longer without food than you can without sleep. Okay, so if people go on hunger strikes, that's a pretty substantive issue. But if you go on a dream strike, and I will tell you later on what that implications are. Okay, but first, a little bit of history. What in your lifetime changed the world you live in compared to when I was born into? So what was the most dramatic change in the world during your lifetime? Technologically, right? Technologically, what was the most important issue? The fax machine. Huh? What are you talking about? All right, so let's talk about human evolution in terms of human functioning behavior in 2026. So the biggest shift in human experience was a move from agrarian to industrial. And in some parts of the world, this is still going on right now. So again, we're going to talk about now of what we're the industrialized world. So we're talking primarily about North America, Western Europe, parts of Eastern Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. They are the most industrialized, we're the most industrialized nations, and still are to a large part. What happened then? So up until the middle of the 19th century, human beings lived basically on a moon-sun cycle. You know, Game of Thrones era, right, got dark, that's when you need the sneak attacks. But basically, sun come up, you go to work, sun goes down, you go to the pub, have a couple of drinks, of course you do, and then you go to sleep. The Industrial Revolution gave us the light bulb. It gave us artificial light. It gave us 24/7 light. And that's when, of course, we started having massive numbers of industrial-based deaths. We had these industrial-based deaths for a couple of reasons. One, there was no occupational health and safety, and human beings were fodder, mostly men again at this point in time in the industrial setting. But, you know, you kill off a few thousand men, what's it matter? My great-grandfather emigrated to Pittsburgh, worked there, that's where this Pittsburgh highlight's there, went back to Hungary, and then my family came over to Canada a couple of decades later. The other part, though, It wasn't just the bad machinery and the unsafe working conditions. It was the fact that we were working 24 hours a day. And so if you want to think about evolution and how long it takes humans to evolve, and obviously I'm a social scientist, so I believe in evolution, we in 2026 have yet to catch up to the invention of the light bulbs. Our bodies are still working about it. And if you want some proof of that, think about daylight savings time. It's still controversial, right? Spring forward, fall back. The Monday afterward, the Tuesday afterward, it takes people, you know what, a while to adjust. That's 1 hour. We're talking about people who, and I'm sure some of you as summer students in your professional careers had to work afternoon shifts, have to work night shifts. Screws up everything. So what am I talking about? How the fax machine ruined the world. This was the beginning of the digital era. This was the beginning of the next major social transformation of humanity. So prior to the fax machine, so the fax machine came in, if you're old as I am, came in the 1980s. And up until the 1980s, I'm working away. I'm at the Addiction Research Foundation. I'm doing some counseling. I'm doing some community development. I'm doing some education. And the boss calls me up on Tuesday. Says, Rick, we've got an urgent report that's due. Karen, no problem. Really was Karen. Karen, no problem. I finished my counseling meetings. I do my presentation next day. I write something up Thursday. I give it to my secretary. We had secretaries in those days. On Friday, she types it up. On Monday, I correct it. We type it a second time and we mail it. No problem. The fax machine shows up and it's like, Rick, I need the report right away. Cancel your afternoon meetings. Don't do your public presentation. Do this. And suddenly the whole pace of my life changed. And in between the 1980s and currently, you have an object more than likely in your pocket, on your desk, or in your purse that has more power than the computers that took Apollo to the moon. And so this influx of information, this flow of data into your brain that's still trying to adapt to the light bulb is impacting us. And we wonder why there's a surge of mental health issues in our society among our young people, let alone pandemic. Even without the pandemic, there's issues of mental health, of intense competition, of intense social insecurity. Above all the social elements, there's an underlying biological piece of just the flow of information and our brain incapacity to deal with it all. So, one of the first things this impacts is sleep. Why bother with sleep, right? In my field of addiction, every single type of psychoactive drug you take, everything from alcohol to cocaine to methamphetamines, changes your sleep pattern. This has then repercussions for behavior and health. If you have a minor mental health issue, it can exacerbate that mental health issue. So I was being chased and I realized it was graduation. I hadn't taken the exam. I looked down and I saw I was naked. Right? These are all universal dreams. When I talk about universal dreams, there's now a whole field of dream studies that didn't exist when I was in university. It's relatively new. There's a whole series of academic literature dedicated to sleeping and dreaming now. And so I'm on the periphery of that, not in the middle of it, but in the periphery of that. And so what you see here is for every culture we've studied, and we've studied cultures globally, is that we share common dreams. And these are some of the common dream themes that obviously we have in North America. So I asked if some of you are brave enough to comment for 30 seconds on a dream you've had, and I have my categorization list right here, and I will categorize your dream, which category you fall into. I just have to take this off so I can stop sharing. And I'm going to, I'm going to lose my screen. There we go. It's not going to work. Okay, I'm going to have to talk to you about the dreams then. So I will go back a slide and ask you if you would be kind enough or brave enough to jump online, not the chat, jump online and say, hi, first name, and this is a dream I had. Rick, what does it mean empirically? I will not interpret it in a Freudian manner whatsoever.
Okay, the first one in the chat is mine, so I can do that.
Go right ahead. Tell me a bit about the dream.
Okay, so I dreamt that I was going on an exciting trip to Paris,
Ooh.
and I was packing for the trip and just was having a hard time figuring out what I should pack and what I should bring. On the way to the airport, somehow I ended up being on this weird bus that went underwater. So I arrived at the airport soaking wet, noticing that I have very little in my bag, no pajamas, no socks, things like that. And my husband, who I was traveling with, was way ahead of me in line about to get on the plane, and he had my ticket.
I hate to tell you how boring you are. You're a typical anxiety dream. Chalk yourself up to being a human being. Welcome to the race. Anybody else want to be boring or somebody else going to be exciting?
I can share a reoccurring dream I've had since I was a kid.
Okay, let's hear it.
So every once in a while, I have this dream that I'm in this underwater mansion, and I know it's
Oh,
based off of the movie like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
look at that insights.
And I am like getting chased by these skeletons, and they keep coming out of like chest of drawers in different parts of the hallways. And then every time I try to like escape this mansion, I open like a door or a window, and it's just like a wall of water, and then I can see like sharks and like things like that. And I know that I'm like so far underwater that I can't like leave this house. So then I close the door or the window, and I keep wandering, and then more skeletons like come out of these chest of drawers.
Um, so I want to say that I do not set up individuals. Everyone's talking in random. We've got two individuals who probably don't know each other other than through this conversation, and they've got two similar themes, right? The themes of water and underwater. Human beings, you know what you can't do underwater? We can't breathe. It's death defying. It's a high risk situation being underwater. You both have water in your dreams, and you're both being chased or are lost. Again, universal dreams. You are so human. Thank you so much for being human. Anybody else?
I don't mind sharing. I wrote it in the chat.
Okay.
I was actually on vacation last week to Mexico with my husband, and my mom and my brother were also there. And I had a dream that my brother tried to kill me. And I was actually yelling, help me," in the dream that my husband had to wake me up because we had one of those joining rooms, and he was worried that the people in the room next to us would hear me yelling, "Help me," at 2 o'clock in the morning. So,
Okay. I'm not even going to go into sibling rivalry here whatsoever, competition for family resources. This is your area of specialty. But yeah, certainly without the violence part, and speaking as an only child with two children who are vastly different, is that, yeah, the notion of competition, and you said you have from childhood, which is fascinating, this notion of competition for resources of parents is, again, a universal theme that we see across cultures. Fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that one. I'm gonna be brave enough and do one more before I tell you my dream.
Rick, I put one in the chat,
Thank you.
and it was about my best friend suffering from headaches and for years, and he's got, we believe, better diagnosis after years and years of this. But I had a dream, and he was very vivid in the dream on a bridge, and of course there is water under the bridge. And while it wasn't completely clear what he did on the bridge, I was clear that I could not save him. And the next day, his wife told me through her tears that he was considering MAID.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that, I know Keith just a little bit through conversation, but isn't that lovely that your concern for your friend shows up, your anxiety for his well-being shows up in your dreams? Information. Mine is, I'm a university professor. I'm a university professor. I still to this day have the dream, which is very much in my cartoons, about having a class, not knowing where the final exam is, not having studied, wondering how I'm going to pass, and failing my degree and not finishing university. I mean, I still have that dream 40 years later. And I give the exams now. I don't have to take them any longer. I had mentioned earlier this morning, for those of you who endured that, is that the natural resting state of humans is anxiety. We take in so much information through our five senses. Again, even before the light bulb came along, let alone digitization, let alone smartphones, that our brains can't process everything. This is why we end up doing things like stereotypes. We just group and clump large pieces of information. And if I didn't ask you how you're feeling right now, you probably wouldn't know what your butt feels like sitting all day long, but that's been processed and ignored by your body as well. So all day long, we've taken this information and we cannot process it all. But what happens during sleep is that we discard the garbage and maintain the important things. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if I was to ask you what you had for lunch on December 4th, I would bet, unless you've got a very specific OCD routine for lunch, like I do, either hummus or cheese, you wouldn't know what you had for lunch, and I'd have to guess. But if I asked you, tell me one embarrassing thing from high school you would remember. Because what you ate the 4th was important for your survival, but you just ate. But being embarrassed in high school, that's life-altering. That's about survival. And you remember those things. You remember to avoid them and never do that again, because the last thing you want to do is be avoided in your peer group. And so when you go to sleep, everything that's happened to you today, everything you've taken in, all the things I and other people have told you, all the things that are on the periphery that you've either checked your emails or checked your texts during the day, you determine what was. Well, you won't, because you're going to be unconscious. Your brain's going to determine what's worthwhile keeping and what's worth not keeping and filtering out. And so that's one thing that happens during sleep, is that all the information you take in is either retained in a long-term memory or gone. I was on this wonderful holiday years ago. It was an anniversary holiday, and we were on a ship. I remember everything about the holiday, but I can't remember a blessed thing about the ship, and I don't know why. It's just there's no memory of it. I was there. I was with Debbie. I can't remember the name of the ship, what room was on, nothing. It's just I remember the places we went, but just gone. It never existed. Just gone from my memory. Don't know why. The other thing that happens during sleeping is the fact that your brain is allowed to wander. And so one of the ways it's allowed to wander is to deal with all these issues that come up. And so every single person that was brave enough to volunteer and talk about their dream, each one had an element of anxiety. And so I mentioned this morning, we take drugs because we're always anxious, and drugs help us just alleviate that temporarily. Well, the other place our anxieties are dealt with in a safe place is when we're sleeping. When you are asleep, and I'll show you the diagram, a bunch of things happen to you. But your dreams fall into one of categories. Most common one is anxiety. The other ones are historical. Whoops. And some of you talk about historical dreams, things that have gone on from the past. Sometimes you'll dream about my grandmother who's passed many, many years ago. We'll dream about high school. We'll dream about relationships we've been in. We dream about places we've traveled to, historic things. So dreaming about the past is, again, very, very common. We'll dream about what happened the day before. Recent history, very common. In that part of that processing, what do we keep, what do we retain? If something substantive, dramatic has happened to you that day, you'll dream about that. And of course, that will be retained in your long-term memory. We have universal dreams. Universal dreams include everyone falls, everyone flies, everyone has dreams about sex or sexuality in some way. There are universal dreams that, again, transcend all societies, just again proving we're all one people and why racism is outright stupid. And then we have unique dreams, and these are things that are unique to you. They're not really anxiety, they're not hysterical, it's something unique happening to you, like, screaming so you wake up the neighbors, or being trapped underwater going to France. Those are unique to you, but they are distinct element of a broader dream that falls into a different category. So you can think about dreams in these ways. They serve a purpose. Dreaming allows you to maintain your mental balance. Apparently some kind of chemical imbalance. I'm happy all the time. Sleep is a process of deletion and retention. What's important and what's not important. And so this is the stereotypical norm. As we all know, we're all unique human beings and nothing's the norm, but this is pretty much the general pattern of sleep. Now, I'm not sure what's been up with me, but the last couple of weeks, I have not followed the normal pattern, which means I'm a little sleep deprived right now. And I'll tell you what it means. Your body loves you. Your body loves you. Even if you're bad to your body will do everything it can to keep you alive despite yourself. So this is the general pattern. This is the North American pattern. The European pattern, and I know this is important to you, has linked stage 3 and 4 together. So you'll also see diagrams are just 1, 2, 3. I use 1, 2, 3, 4 because I like this chart. It's the nicest chart I've seen. It's the nicest graphic one. So I haven't modified it. But if you see 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4 is the same. This is what happens to a typical person when you are sleeping. And again, this is a typical person, not using drugs, not overly stressed, just normal environmental stress, well-fed, housed, not having to worry about the cold or shoveling too much snow right now. This stage 1 through 4 is called NREM, and the little orange parts are called REM, rapid eye movement. And rapid eye movement is so important that this is called the REM and non-REM. This is not as garbage, but this is critical. So think about sleeping. Think about falling asleep. It takes a person who doesn't have excessive anxiety, and again, going back to the families you work with, I would assume many of them don't sleep very well the night before coming to see you. Again, high stress situation, lots of extra anxiety, difficulty falling asleep, means they're not as mentally sharp or on their best behavior, typically. Though adrenaline will kick in and balance that off as well. So number 1, stage 1 sleep. It takes anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. And this is that drowsy state that you just feel yourself sliding away. Stage 1. Stage 1 is transition sleep. It's where you fall asleep and where you go back and forth. Stage 2 sleep, it's not that it's garbage sleep, but it's not really important. What's important is stage 3, 4, and what's really important is REM. Now, again, I told you that your body loves you. It will do everything it can to keep you alive. And so what do I mean by that? You'll notice that stage 3 and stage 4 happen in the first 3 hours of sleep. Typically, again, this is typical profile. This is when your brain is at its slowest. This is when your brain is working the least amount. It's called theta waves, delta waves. Very slow, deep breathing. If the phone rings or your phone rings and you wake up, it's like, huh? It's when if you have to wake up in the middle of the night and you don't know where you are, you're lost, you're confused, am I at home, am I on the road, am I on holidays, are my kids still sleeping? Well, my kids are 30 years old now, they're not sleeping. This is where you're sort of discombobulated, 3, 4 sleep. It's when your brain is at its slowest. And this is when the body does its maximum healing. Remember this morning I talked about nails growing and cuts healing and bones recovering and burns recuperating. This is when the body does most of its healing. Stage 3, stage 4 sleep. And it happens exclusively in the first 3 hours, 3.5 hours of sleep. So even if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours of a night, your body is maximizing the period of time it needs to physically recover to maintain the ability to survive in the jungle of 2026 Canada. Not so much though, but the jungle is, again, we're evolutionary to survive and not be eaten by larger animals. Then you slowly, over the course of a couple of hours, move out of this deep sleep, right? No one knows why we do this cycle. Animals do this cycle as well too, but we move from this deep to this very active, and it's orange for purpose here. It could be red, it could be yellow or green. And this is rapid eye movement. So if you're sleeping beside someone or you watch your kids sleep, right, and they're lying basically still, but their eyes are moving like crazy, rapid eye movement. Why are they basically still? Well, there is a gland that when you enter this REM sleep, secretes something in the bloodstream that basically is a paralyzing agent. So if you know people that are sleepwalking, it's not during REM sleep. You can dream days and weeks in a period of 5 to 60 minutes in a REM cycle. Your brain is more active during REM sleep than it is when you are awake, because you are doing all sorts of things as you described in your dreams. You're doing all that stuff in a short period of time. And again, the dreams were quite elaborate that you shared. Thank you very much. But they're more than likely late stage dreams, so probably 30, 45, 60 minutes. Very rarely, unless you wake up in the middle of the night like old people do to go to the bathroom, you remember these middle dreams. Your eyes are literally scanning the environment. So when you're describing the fact that you were threatened by a sibling, your eyes have been going back and forth. You have been darting. When you're trying to catch that train, your eyes have been moving really quickly as if your entire body was in flight. And so it's during this period of time that, boom, maximum activity occurs. And we're pulling out things from our past, from our present. We're dealing with all the fears that we have that we often have difficulty expressing. And just like memories, imprecise memories, not precise memories, faulty, these dreams pick bits and pieces. And there tends to be no logic to them other than the fact that they tend to deal with anxiety, recent history, past history, or universal themes, flying, sleeping, falling, sex. So, Rick, you told me that this is so important, but can you prove it? Well, I cannot, because the experiments aren't ethical. You can't do them anymore. But back last century, we could do all sorts of experiments on university students that weren't ethical. That's why we brought ethical review boards in. So I'm not sure if any of you have been to a sleep lab before for a CPAP test or just to see how your sleeping is. They can put electrodes on your head, big fancy things like cauldrons with wires sticking out of them, and we can literally monitor this pattern of behavior. So what do? We will wake you up before you start dreaming. Not you, university students who need the money. And so we let you go through stage 3, stage 4, come back up into REM sleep, and boom, before you hit REM sleep, we wake you up. And so you go back into stage 1 and glide down and come back to the second sleep cycle, wake you up, and then you go through this. And so the experiment, the original experiment, was meant to last a month. No university students, right? So in essence, the peak of physical prime activity in human beings is that early adulthood stage. Not one university student was able to stay in the experiment for more than 2 weeks. Their behavior became disorganized, it became aggressive, it became violent, it became psychotic-like. There's actually a Star Trek Next Generation episode based on that experiment. And so if you don't dream, you become mentally unstable. So this is based on 7 hours. Rick, you're presenting today. I was so excited about you presenting, I couldn't sleep. I only slept 5 hours. Well, do I have something for you because your body loves you? So this is why I said you've got this stage 2 sleep that's kind of like garbagey. It doesn't really do anything, it's transitional. If for some reason last night, and not just being excited about hearing me talk all day long, you only slept 5 hours, what will happen tonight if you're able to sleep 7 hours is your sleep cycle will change and you will squeeze in another dream cycle. You won't lose stage 3, stage 4. You'll get squeezed stage 2 of the stage 1. But your body, again, no conscious control over you. This is what your body does on an autonomic nervous system level. If you recall from this morning, my babbling then, psychoactive drugs affect the central nervous system and autonomic nervous system. All of them do. And so tonight you'll have, instead of 4 dream cycles, 5 dream cycles. The other cool thing is when you're a university professor, you have your own hours, which means you can nap in the afternoon. I can tell you, if you are tired or if you're sleep deprived, there are 2 different things. Tired is physical activity. Sleep deprived is if you have a 20-minute nap and boom, you go right into REM sleep. And so when you are sleep deprived and you get a little cat nap in the afternoon, and again, for biological reasons, it's really, really good. You actually should be awake now. But during the panel discussion, you shouldn't be listening to us. You should have been having a 20-minute nap. It would have made you way better, way healthier in the long term. It's what we're biologically rooted to do, is have naps in the afternoon. I know there's contradictory evidence, but those are from people who sell caffeine. Well, that's what we do, by the way, instead. Instead of going to sleep, we drink coffee. We drink stimulants to break down a neurochemical called adenase that tells you it's time to go to sleep. So, but anyway, if you're sleep deprived and you have 20 minutes and you have a dream, you're sleep deprived, you're not just tired. So this is critical, right? This is a critical cycle. This is what we have to do. And what the theme, of course, today being on psychoactive drugs and substance misuse is that every single psychoactive drug disrupts the sleep cycle in some way. So I've got the slides will be given to you. Stage 1 is when you're half asleep, half awake, you relax, you feel groggy. This is when you're drifting off. Sometimes you'll have a nap jerk in this phase. You lose contact with the outside world. That's contracted. And then stages 3 and 4 is physical restorative sleep, right? This is what dogs and cats do all day long. They run like mad and then they sleep. During REM sleep, right? Not so much for you and your roles, but in terms of dealing in preparation, restoration, and referring out. Individuals with trauma histories, certain populations are more susceptible to those, is that during sleep, during the dream cycle of sleep, when you've got that anxiety, right? In trauma and PTSD, they're severe anxiety responses, right? Threats to our survival, anxiety. So they're relived here. There's entire literature, if you're helping families reform, there's entire literature talking about the fact that in counseling, informal counseling, this is necessary for your clients or to help them restore the family, is that dealing with the trauma in a dream is or can be as important with dealing with trauma while you're awake. So there's a whole subdiscipline now working with helping people walk into their dreams, be present in their dreams. And you all recall dreams. So you're present, you know you're dreaming, but you're sort of awake and you sort of know you're there. Is that phase of presence in a dream. And you can walk in, and when I'm having a nightmare, I can walk in and I go, hey, I've already got this degree. And I can wake myself up or I can stop the dream. So this recurring dream I have for 40 years. I remember it because I have it all the time. It's recurring. And I can literally stop it now when I recognize I'm in this lucid dreaming state, right? It's lucid dreaming when you're aware you're dreaming, but you can't wake up because you're paralyzed. And go, hey, I recognize this. And so for people with way more substantive issues than anxiety and phobia like I have, right? This is when I was assaulted. This is when this dissolution happened in my family. You can walk in and address that in your dreams, just as you would in counseling. And it's done during counseling as a process. So this is the next stage of evolution, is that dream analysis. And again, I respect the cultural meaning of dreams. Various different spiritual groups and cultural groups have different meanings in dreams, and I do not disrespect those or disregard those. I'm talking about these through a therapeutic lens alone. The other issue, if you know dreams, you die, right? Other issue here is sleep paralysis. And again, just for information, I'm not sure how much you'll use it in your practice, but when you're in this dream state and you wake up abruptly from the dream, it's a nightmare and you wake up abruptly, often the hormone that's keeping you from thrashing around in bed. So if your partner's thrashing around in bed and whacking in the head like mine does every now and then, they're not dreaming, they're just moving around. That's good for them, that's physical activity. When you're dreaming, you're physically still. But if you wake up too quickly from this, you'll have sleep paralysis. And sleep paralysis is frightening. It literally is paralysis. You are unable to move. Your mind is fully awake. You just come out of a dream, but your body is not ready to move yet. And so if this happens, and again, it's a pattern of people with trauma histories, it is the same thing we do when they're awake, is breathe, relax, wait, normalize this response. So sleep paralysis is a normal response. It fades quickly. The hormone is in and out of your bloodstream very, very quickly. Again, we saw back here, these dream periods are as little as 5 and 10 minutes. The hormone's in, the hormone's out. It's like a drug, right? Drug in the bloodstream, to the heart, to the brain, boom, working right way very quickly. So again, not to be feared. When you review these in the future, share it with somebody else, is that here's again some literature on processing traumatic memories and dreams. When I started doing these lectures, it was brand new. Some people still find it pretty sketchy. Again, based on what we know about dreams and the universality of dreams, there's great value in having people be able to understand their nightmares, appreciate the fact that they're based in anxiety, appreciate the fact that they're not real, and the fact that when you know you're dreaming, it's okay to walk into the dream and say, hey, I can control this. I can walk out. I can change the ending. I can wake myself up. The natural resting state of human beings is a state of anxiety. We have all sorts of anxiety disorders, right? Separation anxiety, selective mutism, phobias, social anxiety, panic disorder, agoraphobia, generalized anxiety. I was a reviewer, on clinical reviewer for several years, and I did so because it was a company that worked for both American and Canadians. And they didn't have anyone that was Canadian that could do this stuff except for me. So I would go down and review files, and one of the files we reviewed to make sure that the clinicians were doing a good job was for a arms manufacturer, munitions manufacturer. And I guess you don't want people in munitions dealing with large explosives to be unwell. But if they were too unwell, they'd lose their jobs. So literally everyone that had to go for counseling, everyone had generalized anxiety disorder. So I guess everyone working in munitions is anxious, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to blow up either. Obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, and compulsive disorders. Again, we talked about this morning, exercising, gaming, gambling, internet use, shopping, sexual activity. Those are all anxiety-based disorders, right? This notion of always being on edge. So what's the response? The response has been using psychoactive drugs. Right? Historically, we use depressants to put us to sleep, and then we use stimulants to wake us up. And again, both disrupt the dream cycle. I will spend the next 20 minutes or so giving you specifics and details, which you can use or not use. But what's important to take away, the key theme here, besides all the minutiae you're about to get, is that if people who are already anxious, your clients who already have anxiety about a session, or who already have some mental health issues, their use of drugs will impact their sleep. Their impact on sleep will be exacerbate or worsen existing mental health issues and intensify them. So before the big session, if they're really anxious about, wanting to do good in the kids and wanting to do good in front of you and not wanting to embarrass anyone, and they have a couple of drinks or have some Valium or some Librium, they in fact will have not slept as well as a natural sleep cycle. They'll in fact be better off than worse off than insomnia would have produced. So here are your families of depressants. Sedative hypnotics, barbiturates, non-barbiturates, hypnotics, don't see a whole lot of these. Benzodiazepines, see benzodiazepines and you'll see the Z drugs. These are the new generation of sedative hypnotics. The purpose of these, take us back to that slide I showed you at the turn of the century with all these people dying in industrial settings. The purpose of sedative hypnotics, which were first synthesized at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, expanded broadly in the 20th century, and then exploded at the end of last century, is to sedate you, is to put you to sleep, right? So whichever member of the drugs that falls in this category, they will artificially slow you down. Artificially slow you down. So number one, you slow down, which is lovely. Number two, I've told you that's going to disrupt your sleep pattern the night before you've slept. Number three is you can't cheat your body. Right? We were talking about the addictive cycle. We're talking about the addictive cycle. And let's see if I am adept enough to do this.
Antihistamines.
But no whiteboard. So the answer is I'm not adept to do this. All right. Well, what you have to do is look at my hands instead. Actually, I'm going to cheat and draw you a diagram of my face. No, it's not. Hate Zoom. Homeostasis, your balance point. When you take a central nervous system depressant, homeostasis, your natural best resting point, right? Well rested, well fed, housed, everything's good. It slows down your brain. So here's your balance point, it slows it down. Your body is always working to get to homeostasis. It's aligned to come back to homeostasis. Back here, back here, back here. I take a benzodiazepine, I take alcohol. It slows me down. Those of you who drank alcohol, knows if you drink too much alcohol, the next day you're on edge, sound hurts, light hurts, right? That's because your homeostatic balance, because you're down here, you've got to make this difference up, and now you're agitated. Roof. So your body's always working to bring you back here, if you're down low, you've got to come back high before you balance out. So now you have a service user who is anxious about the session. They've drank or they've taken a Valium to calm down. It's impacted their sleep. So they're not as sharp, and their anxieties, in fact, can be enhanced the following day. They're not their best. If you continue, however, right? So here's balance. You continue to use the alcohol. After a while, tolerance builds up, and you need more and more. My hands went off the screen, right? You need more and more to balance off. What happens if you stop using? You spike. I mean, I'm off the screen again, right? And so this is when you've got these severe physical manifestations, because the body will work hard always to bring it back to balance. And bring it down is slowing it down artificially. You may have been doing this for weeks, maybe months, with addictions, years. And then suddenly you stop using, and boom, it's not going to take you weeks and years to come back to homeostasis. Your body's going to try and bring you back here as fast as it can in days and, well, weeks, really, if it's been years. And so years of drug use, slowing it down, boom.
Rick,
Physical issue.
sorry,
Physical.
Rick, you need the whiteboard later. If you hit the more button, the whiteboard is in there.
Oh my goodness, look at you be a wonderful human being.
No, it wasn't me, it was Amanda. So yeah, credit goes where credit's due.
There's a more button. All right. Nope. It's not like he's been doing this for years. Yeah, it's not in my more button.
Oh.
I'll go back to sharing slides so you don't have to look at my face anymore. So why it was important this way to talk about families is that the benzodiazepines, these sleep-enhancing drugs, not melatonin, but sleep-enhancing drugs, antihistamines, solvents, glues, industrial solvents, and alcohol all work the same way in the brain. So again, in the issue of addiction, if you've got something that's using Valium, Librium, Zobotec, and then drinking alcohol, you now don't have 1 + 1 = 2. You have 1 + 1 = 3. There's an exponential impact on the brain, central nervous system, autonomic nervous system, when you add two drugs of the same family together. And so you will see here in the notes that you can take away, you can share with individuals, that while it produces sedation, so it helps in stage 1 and stage 2, the amount of time in the physical restorative stages 3 and 4 are negatively impacted, as is REM sleep. So these drugs help you fall asleep and stay asleep, but they don't help with the physical and psychological elements that are associated with sleeping. So these drugs are problematic. The longer you take them, the longer it takes. So if you talk to people who go into treatment, what will happen often when they are in recovery and stopping using members of these drugs, they'll have very vivid dreaming and very active nightmares. What happens when you have vivid dreaming and active nightmares? You don't want to go to sleep. You're scared of going to sleep. I think I see Sharon with a hand up. Is that a hand up for me? Because if it is, I'll answer the question.
Yes, thanks. And I did put it in the chat there quickly, but just like the antihistamines, because I know I took a number of antihistamines and I weaned myself off of ephedrine. But still, because of a number of allergies, we'll take the ones that are not. Are you still grouping them all together, or mostly pseudo or ephedrine stuff?
Thank you so much for the clarification. So the new ones, so we've got 3 generations of antihistamines. Again, this is way towards pharmacology, H1, H2, H3. The new generation that are non-drowsy, H3, the pharmacology is brilliant. The molecules, when they're broken down their blood system, they're too big to pass into the brain. So they will work on in the nasal area, they will work in the eye cavity areas, all those mucous membrane areas they'll work on, but they won't hit the brain. But if you're taking something for motion sickness, you're taking an old Gravol, those will still produce sedation. But the new ones, take them every day. If your grandkids have cats and you're allergic to cats, take them every day so you can play with your grandkids. Yeah, the H3s, the brand new ones, no physical dependency properties. Thank you for the clarification. The other thing And this has befallen my father-in-law now. Again, to consider in terms of allies and support. This may not come across, but we're talking about industrial workforces as well too. So you'll have a generation of primary men who are now in 60s, 70s, 80s who worked in industrial settings. I'm from Hamilton, so we had Dofasco and Stelco and Harvester, all the industries now that we are losing in the digital era and being sent across the border. They worked in those days without respirators, without any sort of breathing apparatus. And so these solvents, you want to think about if you ever crazy glued your fingers together, what that was like, right? And you try to tear them apart, is that these men who work in these industries for 20, 30, 40 years work with solvents in the air all the time. And some of the dementia that we're seeing now is industrial-based dementia. It's not Alzheimer's. It is very much specific to just inhaling solvents for long periods of time in industrial workplaces. And that can account if you've got some issues with grandparents not being able to be present or cognitively aware. And again, among men, my father-in-law is suffering from that right now. He's in long-term care, and he's got a very distinct aspect of Parkinson's and dementia that's related to the workplace that he spent 35 years in. Anyway, so these are all problematic in terms of taking them and being at your best the next day. And again, when you look at the slides, which I won't go into, they'll give you a variety of names of them. Here's the Z drugs. These are, again, safer. No such things as safe psychoactive drug. Simple as that, other than the non-drowsy antihistamines. So Benadryl, Gravol, Nitol, Triminic, they're the ones that will cause sedation. I don't know what to tell you. If we didn't have alcohol, there would be absolutely no economy in Canada. Even Doug Ford's got trouble with whiskeys, right? Just a quick one political note, then I'll move on, is that alcohol is a great revenue generator, produces lots and lots of money for companies, puts lots and lots of employment, and is a net loss to our economy. So even though alcohol has all these values, and I will still have a drink every now and then when I'm on holidays, so I don't want to be a hypocrite about this, but alcohol costs our healthcare and our occupational safety society more than it's brought in revenues. So there's political. Opioids have been a big deal. We've got a drug poisoning crisis in Canada, and this is due to the pharmaceutical industry and false advertising, but that's another political lecture. Opioids are also depressants. So if you mix any of the drugs, mix any of these drugs with an opioid, as little as codeine or morphine or dilaudid, Oxycontin, oxycodone, whichever you're able to get, you again will have a 1 + 1 = 3 effect. What's happening now in terms of Canada and the opioid poison crisis is you're seeing opioids mixed with central nervous system depressants, primarily some sort of benzodiazepine. And when those two are mixed, the medicine, the Narcan and naloxone, that will reverse the breathing from the opioid, doesn't work on the benzodiazepine. So while both of these are slowing down your respiration, slowing down your heart, slowing down your brain function, the Narcan will reverse the opioid, but will have no effect on benzodiazepine. And this is why we've seen the spike in overdose and poisoning deaths, is because of the drug combination. These are a wonderful, wonderful family of drugs. We, as a civilized society, could not function without them. I don't know what kind of pain you ever had. I had kidney stones once. I had a large kidney stone, and I mean, without getting too graphic, the pain was so bad that I was vomiting from it. So lots of really bad pain. I got off to emergency. They put me in. They stuck a needle in me, and I was asleep within 15 seconds. Wonderful substance. Opioids are natural in our brain. They're called endorphins, right? And so endorphins are a natural part of our body. So when I bang my hand, I'll hit a little too hard there. When I bang my hand and I've got pain here, pain exists in two spots. Pain exists in the knuckles in the hand I banged, but the perception of pain is in the brain. The sensors are in my hand, but the perception's in my brain. This way, people who are paraplegic, you can jab them in their legs and they will bleed, but they don't feel it, right? Because the sensation of pain is felt in the brain, localized, perceived at the site, but felt in the brain. And so what opioids do is take the natural level of pain masking. My hand's feeling better already, by the way. Thanks for asking. And so I bang myself, and boom, you've got a release of natural endorphin in the brain. Minimizes the pain. You know, if I poked at my hand again, it would still hurt because it's still sensitive, but I've got chemicals running around my brain now saying, it doesn't hurt that bad. Because your body loves you, we have a finite level of endorphin in our brains. They only produce a finite level, good and bad. Pain is an indicator that your life is being threatened. Do something about it. Now, historically, i.e. prior to surgery, if you had pain in your abdomen and your appendix was going to burst, you would die. Move to 2026, your 35-year-old son says, hi, how's it going? I go, why you called me in the middle of the week? I'm in the hospital. They took my appendix out. It doesn't hurt. They gave me drugs. Thanks, Dad. Right? And so have an operation, give you, a little bit of opioid, 24 hours out of the hospital because you can't afford it in the States, and you're back home, no pain. Upwards of 5 million Canadians a year receive a prescription for an opioid. Of that, less than 1% become physically dependent. So again, I want to clarify the fact that these are literally a wonderful miracle drug unless they're misused. When they're misused is, of course, not to mask physical pain, their purpose. They're misused because they're used to mask psychological pain. They are given because someone is physically unwell, but as most of you know, our physical unwellness is often paralleled with psychological unwellness. And so the opioids don't distinguish. You just feel better. You feel relaxed, you feel sedated, pain goes away, both physical and emotional. The body hopefully will heal itself with sometimes medical aid physically, but we don't heal ourselves psychologically without some support. And so the pattern of dependency we see from opioids is mostly, of course not always, but mostly due to psychosocial issues, not physical. It's not to say that people aren't developing addiction because of a doctor's giving them too much of a drug. But in those cases, it's not the physical pain that has caused it most of the time. We have a dear friend, my partner and I have a dear friend. She's been hit 3 times, not once her fault, 3 times in car crashes, all 3 times severe injuries. She constantly has a fentanyl patch on her, constantly, 100% of the time, day and night, fentanyl patch. She drives. She now lives a little bit east of Peterborough. She's retired and has a farm. She has chickens, and she has fentanyl every day because her pain is so severe. She needs that level of pain masking to get up out of bed and feed the chickens. If I took one of those patches and threw it on my arm, you'll be driving me off to emergency. My physiological need is different than hers. Very simple. Sleeping deals with physical restoration and psychological restoration. If I give you an opioid, you will sleep, you will be sedated, and guess what will be impacted? Your dream cycle. So while you're masking your psychological pain, that's exactly what happens when you're sleeping as well. The ability in your dream cycle to deal with the anxiety, to deal with the recent history, to deal with past traumas is impacted so you can't have fully restorative psychological sleep. So again, the issue with substance dependency is not just about the family circle. It's literally about that person's well-being. And so now you ask in the story I told this morning, what about the person that's been on methadone for 15 years? Yep. So I talked about the fact that her reproductive cycle will be impacted, her gastrointestinal system will be impacted, and her sleep cycle will be impacted. Absolutely. Absolutely. Does she have normal sleep? She has normalized sleep, and people on methadone have normalized sleep because the pharmacology, the way the drug is made, is a little less problematic. But their sleep is not as restful as your sleep. You can still be functional, right? I typically go on 6.5 hours of sleep a night. Always have my whole life. I get a little bit too much dopamine in my system, right? So it's feasible. But again, in terms of looking at planning, you want to avoid these substances on a long-term basis. They're not good for you physically, psychologically, and long-term impact your health because it doesn't allow you to sleep properly. And again, I got some specifics here for you. The stimulants are pretty easy, right? Stimulants speed you up. So don't take cocaine before you go to sleep. Just wondering, right? Don't do crystal meth before you go to sleep. That's fine. Ritalin, Concerta, decongestants. So if you look at the side of a decongestant package, I know it's cold season. It'll say if you have heart conditions, don't take these as well too. Decongestant, very mild stimulant, not a big deal. But if you recall from this morning, male, female, and body weight all matter. So that same amount of drug that I take at male 5'10", 200, and Debbie takes at 5'2", they have a different impact on us. So I'm not trying to undermine my friends in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not trying to take away money from them. But if you are a 5'2" woman and the 5'10", 200-pound man taking the same amount of drugs, you should take 2/3. Again, I'm not that kind of doctor. I'm not a pharmacist. I can't give you medical advice. I just know physiologically, weight, biological sex have an impact on how drugs affect you. And as you get older, right, my liver is not as good as it was 40 years ago. It takes longer to process all the drugs I take. It takes longer to process alcohol. And not processing at the same rate when I was that young ball player now. It takes a little bit longer to get the alcohol to my system. It's just wear and tear on my body. That's part of the aging process. Everything takes longer to heal. One of the reasons that seniors take longer to overcome injury and illness is all the systems in the body that work to help recovery, the cleansing systems, the liver, the kidneys, pancreas, all those things that regulate just don't work as well. So aging has an impact on all of this. It may not be an impact with families you're working with, but again, if you've got grandparents who are going to be caretakers, the grandparents are involved in the circle of care, their drug use just has to be lessened, right? Don't drink coffee after 5 o'clock in the evening. Drink decaf. Even decaf has a little bit of caffeine. Drink tea instead. I don't drink either. If you don't know what COT is or bath salts are, and it shows up as part of a record or a chart, look it up. This is not a big deal, unless you're Somali trying to be thrown out of the United States, that's a big deal. These are a nasty little drug. We don't see a whole lot of them in Canada. Very popular in England, haven't made themselves over. They're not the things you put in your bath salt. They're methamphetamine. They're related to COT. But again, these are drugs that aren't going to show up a whole lot. If they do, you got your email, send me a note, and I'll talk to you more about them, or I'll make you buy my book. Nicotine, caffeine, very minor stimulants. Not a big deal. But again, will they impact your sleep? Caffeine, not very much. I mean, you can drink 2 or 3 cups a day. Again, as you get older, drink less caffeine. Not a big deal. Drink decaf, drink Canadian. Well, there's no Canadian coffee, never mind. My grandparents, when they came to this country and the Depression hit and they had no money, they became tobacco sharecroppers. So I think part of the reason I'm in the addiction field is to pay penance for their sins. Other than being an insect repellent and having a little bit of minor utility with Alzheimer's, so there's much better drugs than nicotine. This is just the number one cause of premature death in the country. 46,000 Canadians a year will die from prematurely from nicotine-related causes. And on top of that, if you're smoking before you go to bed, you don't sleep as well, you don't dream as well. The other really disruptive thing about nicotine is that it gets in and out of the body really, really quickly. So the other part of the sleep cycle that's impacted here is people literally who are chronic smokers, a couple of packs a day. Hopefully none of you are that because it's not good for you. They will wake up and they'll be in withdrawal. I mean, nicotine clears the body so quickly. Nicotine and cocaine are the 2 drugs that clear the body the fastest. So it clears the body so quickly that you'll wake up in withdrawal, which is why you see people first in the morning, will get up and go on the deck or outside and have a cigarette. The other thing, and again, without being judgmental, in terms of a safe environment for a child. In the state of Georgia, of all places, right? Not the most sophisticated place on the planet. My kid lived there for a while. And in France, supposedly in Canada, but no one enforces it. But the state of Georgia is the first one in North America. France was the first one in Europe. It's against the law to smoke in an enclosed vehicle with anyone under the age of 18. It's against the law. It's a criminal offense, right? So anything but not nicotine because it's socially acceptable, but nicotine, obviously methamphetamine, crack, cannabis, anything smoked in the presence of children is a toxic agent, is a poison in the air. And again, just in consideration, making safe environments and making recommendations anything that is lit and burnt, that's carbon-based, which is all psychoactive drugs, any drug that you burn outside. That's a rule. A rule. And again, there's a little notes about all the drugs for you that can give you specific details on all the drugs. I mentioned briefly this morning that LSD-like drugs, do I have these? LSD, LSD, psilocybin, magic mushrooms are pure hallucinogens. They have no secondary effects. They do not produce physical dependency. So if I go to a club on Friday night and someone gives me some LSD, because I know, and I drug test it, I have a drug testing kit to know it's actually LSD and not mixed with anything else. So I do some drug checking and I take the LSD and I'm having a great time because I'm on the dance floor dancing with Albert Einstein, and I got Cher with me as well too. I got a great dance party going on. I go back to the same dealer on Saturday night and say, hey, that was a good party last night. I got the same thing. He gives me, I buy 2 pills. I check one is a good drug. I take the second one, always being safe with my drug use. And tonight I'm dancing with Bono. I got Springsteen, and I got one of those Kardashians, so I don't want to dance anymore. I go back on Sunday night because it's a long weekend. I go, oh man, I've been having a great time. Give me another one. Buy 2, check it. It's all good. And I'm dancing by myself. The phenomenon, which you don't need to know about, is called tachyphylaxis. It's total tolerance builds up in 2 or 3 days of taking these drugs, which is why they're the perfect party drug, is that you take on the weekend, it dissipates from your system, there's no physical dependency, and then you can't become dependent upon them. Lovely drugs. Ecstasy, MDMA, slightly different. It has secondary stimulant effects, and so is more problematic. So again, down the road, as your practices build up and people are being involved in psychotherapeutic, psychedelic therapies, the LSD and the psilocybin have limited side effects. The ecstasy, the MDMA, which has got really nice results in clinical studies with veterans who've experienced PTSD from wartime trauma, really positive results. The other place that they're using MDMA is end-of-life care. So people who are at end of life and are depressed because it's the end of their lives. It's a natural state to be in, but are so depressed that they cannot function, cannot say goodbye to loved ones. They're using ecstasy as well to mood and light. It changes the way the brain fires. It is a massive dose of serotonin, which is the antidepressant effect in the brain. It does enhance mood and doesn't have to be taken on a regular basis. So
Rick, probably just a couple more minutes before we need to wrap up with some questions. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for telling me that. LSD, thank you. Okay, well, because you want to know about cannabis. All right. Cannabis is its own distinct category of drugs. It is physical, psychological pain producing. You can become addicted to it, and it deepens sleep. Imagine that. I know no one does smoke cannabis when they're a teenager. Deepen sleep, fall asleep faster, and increase slow wave sleep. That's stage 3, 4, physically better. But again, as more cannabis you smoke, your REM sleep goes down. There's a report this week, CBC, increasing psychosis among young people. There is no doubt that the decrease in sleep and the increase in anxiety disorders and the increase in cannabis use are all correlated. I've got some tips on how to sleep well if you want them later on. I've got my email. If you want to email me, this one is work one, but I'm not sure how long they'll let me work there. You can email me here, and I am more than happy to answer any questions you have to make your practice better as you move forward. Vicki has told me I've only got 10 minutes to take questions or 9 minutes to take questions. So if you want to fire something at me, I'm more than happy to answer that.
There is one in chat, Rick, about serotonin modulators used to treat sleeping disorders.
Yeah. So serotonin is a natural brain chemical. Its job is to relax you. And certainly antidepressants, SSRIs, the Prozacs of the world, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors allow your brain to use more serotonin. So they will help with sleep. The drugs I was just talking about, the hallucinogens will also produce serotonin. The difficulty, though, is that diagram I tried to show you with my hands in homeostasis. When you start manipulating serotonin, there's two ways. Do you have an increased amount of serotonin release, which you see with the MDMAs, and you see with the psilocybin, and you see with the LSD? That's great one-off. On the long term, however, if you continue to use a serotonin releaser as opposed to a serotonin enhancer, and serotonin enhancers are the SSRIs, they're the Prozacs of the world. They take the existing serotonin you have in your brain and allow the brain to maximize what's already there. The LSDs, the psilocybins, the MDAs take it and maximize output. When you maximize output, right, more serotonin, body comes back to here, serotonin, and you have this. You may have heard, and it's a controversial term, you may have heard of the term Suicide Tuesdays. Suicide Tuesdays was a term in the drug culture for people that were using ecstasy, clubbing on the weekends. They had this big burst of serotonin. And then Monday, as you start to come back to homeostasis, Tuesday, your body is deficient serotonin, so it starts making it up as well too. So serotonin enhancers, you want to look at ones that maximize the natural amount of serotonin as opposed to pushing out extra in the brain, because then you'll have a rebound effect.
Okay, there's also a question about melatonin.
Yeah, melatonin is not psychoactive. I've read a lot about melatonin. I'm big on sleep hygiene first. I've got a sleep hygiene chart there, right? So no TV in the bedroom, no phones and activity an hour before bed, no caffeine, regular bedtime, a cooler environment, bedrooms only for reading, sex, and sleep. I would do all of those. I would deal with bedtime ritual of breathing relaxation. And once all those physical elements, that again, I'm not that kind of doctor, right? And then the melatonin. But the literature seems to indicate that melatonin, again, is a natural substance that is enhanced. The difficulty with the whole drug literature and the question about melatonin is that in our brains, we've got these 100, 120 neurotransmitters, and they define who we are biologically as human beings. None of us are normal because none of us have 120 neurochemicals all at the balance level. Too much serotonin, not enough dopamine, too much norepinephrine, not enough melatonin, right? But this is who you are. This is who you are. And you adapt. Now, sometimes way too much of a drug or not enough leads us into mental health issues, and then we need to intervene with medication. But the question, and there's a wonderful study that was done with people who had schizophrenia, had a level of psychosis. It was a long-term study, 3-year study. And they took volunteers, so half the people and gave them medication, and half the people and gave them behavioral reinforcement. Again, this is outside the scope of your practice. What they found is that for the first year or two, the people on not medication, way more problems, way more issues for their families, criminal justice issues. The people who were given drugs were good for the first 2 years. But year 3, the group started coming together. Because the natural resting state of the people with schizophrenia was way too much dopamine. I mean, the dopamine levels were way too high. And the drugs were bringing them down, bringing them down, bringing them down. But the natural state of homeostasis was too much dopamine. So the body kept finding ways to get around the medication. The people that are taught behavioral mechanisms, their life was a little more rocky, but more stable after 3 years because they'd learned coping mechanisms to deal with who they are. And so that, I think, is the function of therapy and counseling, is the biological box you're given, is how do you adapt it to who you are without screwing around too much with the brain chemicals. But again, I'm a social worker. I can't prescribe, so I'm biased.
So I think in the interest of time, because we want to make sure that everybody has enough opportunity to get back into the main room, again, using your link that you would have had before. So thank you. Rick, again, this was such an informative discussion and presentation that you've done for us this afternoon. I certainly have learned a lot, and in relation to how this might be impacting our clients, and even a simple question is, how'd you sleep last night, right? Before they come in, I think is could be quite telling for us, right, in terms of readiness for a discussion. So thank you. Thank you for everyone. The recording will be shared. The recording will actually be on the OAFM YouTube channel and the George Hall YouTube channel, and the PowerPoint as well will be in the resources that have already been shared with participants. So thank you again, and we'll see everybody back in the main room. All right.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.